Hello everybody and welcome back to another report card video. Today we're going to be talking about the CIS and their support options. Sorry about the delay in the videos. I had to move and unfortunately I had a family emergency and funeral and a couple other things that kind of slowed me down, but I'm going to be pumping out some videos for you guys and kind of getting up by 4 videos in this week and between the next week as well. So hope you guys enjoy this one, but let's go ahead and get started. So once again, this is how I grade the units. Feel free to pause that and check out how I go about ranking these units. So first up we have the Droidicas coming in at 70 points. I give them a D+. They've got AI attack and move, generator 1, shielded 4, and wheel mode. Wheel mode can be a little complicated to new players, so just kind of explain it. When you activate, you may increase your maximum speed to 3. If you do, until the end of the round, you gain cover 2 and cannot attack or flip shield tokens. So essentially you're either going fast or you're using that speed 1 move to walk around with your shields up and your guns out. So a lot of versatility in that, but let's kind of go ahead and talk about these dudes. They also did get a 5 points reduction from this last errata, and I do think that allowed them to not be one of the worst units in the game, but I don't think it helped them enough at all for you to consider them anything next to the word good. But let's go ahead and look. Pro, they're fast. When you're using wheel modes, especially on the other side of things, when they do pop out into ball mode and they've got their shields up and their guns out, they're really hard to start mowing through. You're going to need big dice pools because that generator 1 bringing back a shield essentially every round is going to make them really hard to munch through. Suppressive is also going to be really nice on these dudes, especially since you can split fire as their individual models, or not split fire, but you can use the range 3 with multiples of these. That's usually one of the ways you're going to run Droidicas, is not 1, not 2, but probably 3. I definitely could see some people just running 1 in their list, but versatile role because you can go really fast with them and then you can pop them out when you need to get a little more offensively, but they can play things like bombing run and breakthrough no problem. Cons, I still think they're third place in this role, which is unfortunate. Wheel mode can also be a trap because you're just getting cover 2, which is pretty normal for almost everything in this game at this point, so that's nothing to write home about, and I would say that's when they're the most vulnerable, is you definitely do not want to give players shots on the Droidicas while they're in wheel mode, unless you just feel comfortable they don't have enough dice to get through you. Certainty to defend is kind of nice with 3 health, but these things can easily take a lot more hits when they actually have those shields up. A good thing is to try to never lose one until you are back up with your shields, because you can take a wound or 2, pop out your shield, and still have even more health technically with shield 4, but you have to be careful about who, what, when, and where. So can be a trap, and on top of that, it's just kind of hard to manage like when you should do what, especially when it's you trying to get orders to these guys. I think that's easily the biggest problem, is they have AI attacker move. So I think that's really going to mess with your ability to do what you want to when you are also trying to micromanage should they be on the offensive mode or the fast mode. So whichever it is, I think that's easily the greatest weakness of Droidicas, is they're one of the harder units, if not the hardest unit in the whole faction, especially when you're running 3 of them. Like I said, one of them's whatever, to get them orders. So maybe someone like Kraken can kind of help them out, where he can override the AI stuff, but even then he's going to have a hard time keeping up with a speed 3 unit when it is in wheel mode. Nonetheless, I'm still glad these guys get a little bit of a points change because they're an awesome thematic unit, but I just don't think they're that competitive, but they would have probably been an F- before that 5 points, so I do give credit where credit's due. Next up we have the old myth, the old legend, the Dwarf Spider Droid, coming in at 55 points at its base. We'll definitely have to add some more to that in a second, but I give it a B-. I think it's just a good all-around unit that you can't really go wrong with, but probably can't win you any games anymore. Self-destruct 4 wounds, you can blow it up for that little self-destruct mechanism at the bottom right of the card, which is very nice. Armor 3 makes it extremely tough, especially when we're talking about heavy cover as well. Climbing vehicle, expert climber, all that stuff allows it to get around terrain a little bit better. Programmed, you have to equip one of the 3 programming cards, which we'll look at here in a second. It has 6 health. It's a single model with breaking at 4, surge to hit and defend, which is nice, and a speed 2 move. Interesting little rainbow on the melee. But pros, you got 3 weapon options, so you can run it 3 different ways is probably the best way to look at it. I'll just mention the range 4 ion gun. It is way more expensive than it used to be, but it's also just as good as it used to be. So I don't think it's nearly the menace it used to be, just because you have to give up other stuff in the list, but I think it's still a decently competitive lineup when you bring Kalani and Double Ion Spider. It's definitely more expensive, like I said, but I think that's what keeps the Spider Droid at like a B minus and not just a C or a C plus, just kind of middle of the road, because I think that's also pretty good with the persistence of armor in the meta right now. Interesting melee, especially when you tack on the self-destruct, which is what I'm thinking. You can, kick, blow up, do what you need to, and all of a sudden your opponent's looking at a lot of saves they have to make in melee of all things. So these guys are pretty defensive as well on top of that, just to kind of deter people from getting back there. Armor 3 with 6 HP is no joke. You can definitely keep these things alive with the right utility. But speaking on that with the cons, it needs a lot of help from other units is what it feels like the most. Like I said, Kalani Double Ion Spiders is a notorious combo, but it's also the only way that really works a lot of times because you need to be refreshing the gun, giving these guys aims, letting them get more aims because their AI is going to kick in, going to need to recover, use Kalani's card to recover, oh hey that works, whatever. These things are going to need orders most of the time to use the ion guns, and even when you are using the other weapons like the flamethrower and the range 3 one, you're going to want some order control to at least get to go with them when you want to. And when we look at the programming, that will also kick in what you can and can't do. They're now pricey in terms of the ion gun specifically. It's mostly what I'm talking about when I'm talking about this unit. The other two weapon options are fine, but we'll talk more about them in a second. Can be tricky to move around. These guys are big medium bases, I believe, but they are not necessarily the best at getting where they need to be because they have that front arc. So with a unit that you really need both of its actions to be probably recover shoot or aim shoot or move shoot, it's going to be really hard to justify doing something like a pivot. So you definitely want to be careful about that in terms of getting them in the right places. They're pretty much just big gun platforms, but they are big platforms. Looking at their upgrades, you've got the 3 protocols on the left. First one means you just AI aim, but you do get precise too, which is nice. Second one, AI dodge, but you get nimble and outmaneuver, making them extremely defensive. And then engagement protocols, you can just do a basic AI attack or move. These are all combos that kind of go with our weapons. Like engagement protocol is usually pretty good with the flamethrower. Defensive protocol is usually good with probably the flamethrower too, honestly, but maybe like the laser cannon once it gets into range 3. And then attack protocols is great for the ion blaster just because it allows you to roll some of those lower quality dice over and over again until you get what you want. But nonetheless, 3 points, 3 points, 5 points. You do have to take one of these on the Spider Droid, so do remember that when you guys are building your list. If you're newer to this unit, you definitely need to ensure that you put that on there. Now, flamethrower, red, white, blast, fixed front, and spray. That's fine. I think this is actually one of the better flamethrower units in the game, especially if you do defense or engagement protocols. Kind of move them up the board with maybe like Kalani, for instance. Or not Kalani, but Kraken or Kalani for that matter. This good. I mean, red and white is not bad at all, especially with the self-destruct mechanism and the melee. You're actually going to find a lot of times you're already at range 1, so why not blow up on top of it when you're about to die? Nose-mounted Ions Blaster is just 25 points. That's the only downside of this, but, I mean, Ion 1, more importantly, just a range 4 gun that's got 6 dice, and, you got attack protocols. It is exhaustible, though, so you will need to refresh it. Kind of cut it off there, but Impact 2, Ion 1, it's just really good, and it kind of gives the CIS a little more anti-armor in lists, and range 4 on top of a lot of the range 4 critical 1 they already have. So it's a very interesting mechanic that used to dominate the meta, but it's just as good, it's just more expensive, so if you can fit it in a list, go for it. Nose-mounted laser cannon is just the classic white girl Starbucks coffee. 1 red, 3 black, 1 white, critical 1, fixed front at range 3. I think this unit's probably okay at range 3 just because of things like armor 3 and the fact it can get cover a lot better now is going to make that a lot more feasible of an upgrade to play it like that. I just think that this is probably unironically the one that needs the orders the most, just to make sure that it's staying in range 3 and getting as many aims as possible, or dodges if you're doing defense protocols, or whatever you're going about doing it like. It's just important to realize that there's better range 3 options in the game. But for droids, this is actually a pretty solid one, so that's just kind of the middle of the road one, but I don't really ever see it succeed with just 5 dice, so I think it's still good, just not amazing. Stab Riders, on the other hand, Coming in at 75 points and a B plus. Before we get started on this unit, I know that a lot of people love these things in terms of competitiveness. I think they're about a B plus, but I could definitely understand if you're one of those people that's like, no, 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 they're an A plus or they're an A or an A minus. I've just played against them enough now that I feel like if you understand when to attack them, they're actually one of the easier units at 75 points that you can just take off the board. But let's talk about them. Agile 1, AI move, coordinate to droid, trooper, or vehicle, and then cover 1 and speeder 1. So your classic speeder keywords for the most part. You got 2 models with 3 health and they do not break. No surging on defense or offense, and speed 3. Critical 1, fixed front, 3 black dice apiece. Pretty nice, making that critical 2 if you have both bikes. Pros, speeder, they're fast, they can play objectives that other units can't. Free dodges, this is easily the biggest part of them, is they can be extremely hard to kill. For instance, if they double move and use the speeder keyword, that's 3 dodges. So that's not going to be easy to pinch through, especially when we're talking about cover 1 and probably cover 2 a lot of times. You're talking 5 hits that just get taken off as long as they're not criticals. Critical 1 also helps them. They don't surge to hit, but they're essentially going to get 2 crits out of that, but that also makes them half decent against armor or dodge units or things that have cover. That's just a nice little keyword to have in there. They can also easily do some order combos. You usually just put like a long range comm link and then do like direct from Kalani to these guys and just give all 3 of them orders because they can coordinate to each other, or even just 1 or 2. Either way it works, which is pretty cool because that really helps them get orders up as well. So it'd be nice to play droids with 3 bikes and then still have all 3 bikes with orders. So that's really strong, and that's what a lot of people do to make sure these guys are not having to do the AI move, because while there's probably worse AIs out there in terms of what unit has to do it, move is still not the best for them. Cons on the other end, they are extremely vulnerable before dodges. If you can like go first and shoot a bike unit, you can probably at least wipe a model out, if not 2 with the right unit shooting at them. So once these guys start dive bombing you and getting into range 3, yes, they're probably going to hit you pretty hard, but if you go first before they start moving and getting those dodges and accumulating those dodges, or maybe they're aim shooting then speedering with only 1 dodge, you can take these dudes off the board very quickly because they simply do not surge to defend. And that's my biggest thing against them, is I know the dodges are good, but I just find so many times that my opponent needs to get the offensive side of them out to kill some of my units, and in return it's just a massacre on the other end. But the other way that makes them really good is when they are specifically playing just objectives like bombing run and triple moving. They're going to have 3 dodges and they don't really care about shooting, so there's going to be situations where they're actually arguably better as a speeder bike to make plays and get objectives done. But usually speeders are going to be shooting and flanking and doing things like that. These guys are by no means bad, don't get me wrong. I just find a lot of times that you can focus these guys down very quickly. Dice pools fall off after losing 1 model, maybe less so than some other bikes just because of that critical 1 keyword, making them, maybe pushing 1 crit through every time, but that is a rarity when you only have 3 dice. So typical speeder problems, but at the end of the day, it's still a speeder and it's still a really good unit. It's found a lot of success in the faction, so if you want to play these guys, I would say get 3 of them. I've never really seen 1 or 2 be successful. You're usually doing all or nothing, and that's just because, like I said, I think they're really easy to focus down, and at 75 points, that's not really ideal. The other con that I forgot to mention is the one that has usually long-range comm link, because that's their one upgrade slot they can take. It's almost always the one I shoot first, so then the other 2 bikes do not have orders. But like I said, that's only when players allow me to do that, so always know that you can do a lot with these guys and make a lot of plays happen. I think they're a super cool unit. I just don't know if they quite make it to A minus or A plus for me. So if you guys disagree, though, I completely understand. These guys are a very solid unit nonetheless. Summary, something for everyone. You got fast unit, you've got the spider droids that kind of cover all 3 really, and then the droidicas are kind of a hybrid of a fast unit and just a range 3 sit down and shoot. What unit do you guys want to see added? And this is kind of more of a generic question for CIS. Out of all the factions, I could probably sit here and make you 10 units for each of them, but droids, a little bit less for me at least. I don't know. I just also mentioned this because I think of the crab droid as a support or maybe a heavy even, but nonetheless, I don't know. It feels like this faction could, like all of them, use another support, but I don't know. Crab droids just come to my mind is all I was thinking about. Maybe not the most important slot for CIS. I think you'll be fine if you don't own any three of these models, but you probably will because they're cool for the most part, all aesthetically pleasing. Um, but you know, if you guys don't care about any of those or none of those sounded interesting, you're not gonna go to sleep at night regretting your decision to buy a 6B1 or something else. So AI plus orders is easily the weakest part of this slot for the faction. Usually for droidicas and staffs, we're talking you want three of them, which means that's a lot of orders you have to take care of to maintain that beautiful, perfect order control that CIS often flexes at tournaments and even casual games, which is a big staple of what makes them stronger as a faction when their saves and things like that are a little bit weaker. On the other side of things, that's also probably the weakest part of the support slots in this faction is just a lot of them want orders. Even the spider droids want orders, so kind of a rough situation for them in a faction that is trying to maintain perfect order control. This is probably the slot that's going to screw you over the most. Staffs are strong. You're going to see them in competitive tournaments, so even if you don't like them or played this faction, this is probably one you want to learn a little bit more about. I do think they are a little bit tricky to understand who, what, when, and where you need to shoot them, but like I said, you always want to shoot them before they start moving and getting those dodges. Seems pretty simple, but sometimes there's 10 other things to be shooting at the same time. But nonetheless, Ion Spiders plus Kalani is still really good. It's just more expensive. So if you guys like that combo, I've definitely seen some people in our local community still playing it, and it's still really solid. You just pretty much lose upgrade, or maybe you swap Magna Guards to just a 6B1, or maybe Maul turns into another Magna Guard. Like, whatever happened, happened, but the list is still really good, and I think it's actually a really good basis for learning the game in terms of, oh, here's a unit that works with two other units and makes a strong combination. And it's going to help you do things like recover, pass out tokens, shoot first, then recover, or recover, then shoot. It's going to require a lot of thinking, but it's going to be a great learning experience. And I think it's one of those combos that when I played it, I was like, oh, I'm kind of picking up some different strategies for the game of Star Wars Legion. So I think it's a good learning experience if you just have them and you haven't really tried that double Ion Spider with Kalani. Just give it a run. It's more expensive, but it's not bad. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm definitely going to be pumping out some more as consolidation for y'all's long wait. I apologize for the wait. I just had a lot of stuff happen. Funeral, had to move into my new house, but we are all set up. We got the internet yesterday, so I'm recording these videos and they should be uploaded soon. But hope you guys enjoy. In the comments down below, what was your favorite change from the errata? Once again, once I do these last four heavy report cards, I will be pumping out a report card video for the errata and changing everyone's grades. But also on top of that, do remember that every unit I am grading from here on out is considering the errata, like the droidicas today are graded based off the 5-point change. That is not the old grade. But nonetheless, you guys leave down in the comments below what change was your favorite. Mine, for instance, was Callus, and I may be running a little Callus. Hope you guys enjoy. See you next time.